When I picked up the phone to ask my son, Michael, what time his wedding would be, my daughter-in-law, Ashley, looked me straight in the eye and said with a cold smile, "Oh, we actually got married yesterday. We only invited special people." Those words hit me like a bucket of cold water. Special people. Me, the woman who for 3 years paid their monthly rent, bought every piece of furniture for their apartment, filled the refrigerator when they had nothing to eat, and yet I was not a special person. I stood rooted in my own living room, the phone feeling as heavy as 1,000 pounds in my hand, watching my son avoid my gaze while Ashley casually sat on the sofa I had bought them. The navy dress I had chosen to wear to their wedding still hung silently in my closet, useless like the new shoes, along with the illusion that I would be part of the most important day of my only son's life. I had spent $120 on that dress, imagining I would look radiant in Michael's wedding photos I would never appear in. For weeks I had planned every detail. I put aside $600 to give them as a wedding gift. I called my sister in Boston to tell her the good news. I cleaned the house top to bottom, thinking they might stop by to celebrate with me after the ceremony. Everything collapsed in an instant when I heard those 4 poisonous words, "Only special people." Michael finally looked up and spoke in a voice that sounded rehearsed. "Mom, it was a private ceremony, very small, just the 2 of us and the witnesses. But I knew it was a lie. I had seen the pictures on social media. I saw Ashley's parents posing proudly beside the bride and groom. I saw her siblings raising champagne glasses. I saw Ashley's white dress, the dress I had helped pay for with $60 I gave her last month for personal expenses. I saw everything I had not been invited to witness. 1 week later, exactly 7 days after that, humiliation. Ashley called me with a completely different voice, no longer the confident woman who had excluded me from the wedding. This time her voice was desperate, almost pleading. "Patricia, the rent is late. The landlord is putting pressure on us and says if we don't pay this week, they'll evict us. You forgot to transfer the money." Her voice trembled as if the whole world were collapsing. I was silent for a few seconds, remembering all the times I had rushed to the bank to transfer money for them. All the times I had canceled my own plans just to make sure they had a roof over their heads. All the times I had eaten frugal meals so I could give them money for their wants. And now, after excluding me from the most important moment of their lives, they had the audacity to call me as if nothing had happened. "Ashley," I said, with a calm that surprised me, "didn't I tell you I only help special people?" The silence on the other end was so deep I could hear my own heartbeat. For the first time in years, it wasn't me who was shaking, it was her. "Patricia, I don't understand," she stammered. "We've always been special to you. You're like a second mother to me. All lies." Those sweet words only came out when she needed something. The same voice had been used to ask me for money for the wedding dress, for the honeymoon, for the wedding rings I helped finance, never knowing I would never see the moment they exchanged them. For years I lived as if walking on eggshells, measuring every word, every gesture, every gift, hoping for a crumb of affection from my own son. I was the perfect mother, the tolerant mother-in-law, the silent provider who never protested when they treated me as invisible. But that phrase, "only special people," awakened something in me that had long been asleep. I did the math in my head, totaling what I had spent on them over 3 years. Rent, food, gifts, emergencies, indulgences, more than $12,000. The money I had taken from my pension, from savings, from the funds my late husband left for me to live comfortably in my later years. And all for what? To be treated like a stranger on my son's wedding day. That night, after I hung up, I sat on my bed and cried. But they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of anger, of years of humiliation swallowed in silence. I cried for all the times my love had been treated like a burden, my presence an annoyance, my money the only thing anyone valued. I cried for the foolish mother I had been, for the woman who lost herself trying to be indispensable to those who considered her disposable. When I woke up the next morning, something had changed inside me. Not only the pain of betrayal, but something deeper and colder. I stood up and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. The same tired eyes, the same wrinkles that tell the story of years of loving without return. But there was something different in my look, a hardness I did not recognize, a determination that had been buried beneath years of acquiescence. I went to the kitchen and made coffee, as I had for 40 years. But this time I didn't think about calling Michael to ask if he was awake. I didn't check my phone, waiting for an apology. For the first time in many years, the first person I worried about was myself. I sat at the table where I had once planned surprises for them, counted bills for their expenses, and cried in secret when they treated me coldly. Now that table would witness something entirely different. I took my checkbook and bank statements and began to calculate. I wanted exact numbers for how foolish I had been. Rent $900 a month for 36 months, a total of $32,400. Food, about $200 a month, another $7,200. Birthday gifts, Christmas, wedding anniversaries, at least $1,800. Ashley's, medical emergencies, $500. The car loan I never got back, $1,500. The air conditioner repair, $60. The living room furniture set, $800. A total of $44,260. That was the exact figure of my generosity. I had thrown away $44,260 from my husband's inheritance, from my pension, from savings I had put away penny by penny during a lifetime of honest work. All that money tossed in the trash to keep two grown adults comfortable who couldn't even pretend to respect me. The phone rang and Michael's name lit up the screen. Normally, I would have rushed to answer, heart pounding, hoping he would finally apologize and explain that it had all been a misunderstanding. But this time, I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Eventually it stopped, and I kept drinking my coffee as if nothing had happened. 10 minutes later, it rang again, Ashley this time. I let that go too. Then a text from Michael popped up. "Mom, pick up. We need to talk urgently." I deleted the message without replying. At 2 p.m., I decided to go for a walk. It had been months since I did that without a specific purpose, without running errands for them. Before, my outings were always bank transfers, grocery runs for them, pharmacy trips for Ashley. Today I walked simply because I wanted to. I passed the park where I used to take Michael when he was little. I remembered the sweet boy who used to hug me tight and say I was the best mother in the world. When did that boy become a man who saw me as an ATM with feelings? When did I start confusing love with money, believing I had to buy my son's affection? I stopped in front of the bank where I had made countless transfers. The manager, Richard Coleman, saw me through the glass and waved. I had known him for years. He had processed every transaction I sent to Michael and Ashley. He had watched my account drain, month after month, to fill theirs. I went in and went straight to his office. "Mr. Coleman," I said, "I need to cancel all my automatic transfers." He looked at me in surprise. For 3 years, those transfers had been as regular as sunrise. "Are you sure, Miss Patricia? Is something wrong?" His concern felt more genuine than anything Michael had shown me in months. "I've finally opened my eyes," I answered. "I want to cancel everything, and I want to know how to protect my accounts. I don't want anyone but me to touch my money anymore." As he processed the cancellations, my phone would not stop ringing. Michael, then Ashley, then Michael again, as if they had developed a radar for when their cash source was in danger. I turned the phone off completely. "Miss Patricia, Mr. Coleman said as he handed me the papers. "I'm sorry to pry, but I've seen you be so generous with your family for years. I hope nobody has been pressuring you into this." His words struck me to the core. A stranger, beyond banking transactions, worrying about me more than my own son had. "They aren't pressuring me, Mr. Coleman. On the contrary, I've finally stopped pressuring myself," I said. Walking out of the bank, I felt strangely light, as if I had left a huge weight in that office. For the first time in years, my money was truly mine. No more financial obligations to people who saw me as a walking wallet rather than a human being. I walked home thinking of all the things I had missed to please Michael and Ashley, trips I didn't take to save money for them, friends I let fall away because I was always available for their emergencies, hobbies I abandoned because every dollar I spent on myself felt like one less dollar for their needs. When I got home, 3 cars were parked right in front of my door, Michael's, Ashley's, and a car I didn't recognize. I could hear movement inside through the windows. My blood ran cold. They had keys. I had given them keys because I trusted them, believing that one day they would care for me as I had cared for them. I took a deep breath before opening the door. This was the moment of the first real confrontation of my new life. I opened my door and faced a scene I will never forget. Michael sat on my sofa with his head in his hands. Ashley paced back and forth like a caged animal, and there was an older gentleman I didn't know, going through papers on my dining table, my papers, my personal documents. "What is going on here?" I asked, my voice managing to remain steady. The 3 of them looked at me as if I were an intruder in my own home. Ashley was the first to speak, her voice carrying that urgent desperation I had heard on the phone. "Patricia, thank God you're here. We need to talk. Mr. Harris is from the law office. We consulted about your situation." "My situation?" The question came out of my mouth with a calm that surprised even me. "What situation?" "I am perfectly fine." Michael finally looked up and met my eyes, eyes that had once been a child's, now only reflecting financial panic. "Mom, we went to the bank and they said you canceled all the transfers." Mr. Coleman explained, "You also locked our access to your accounts. We don't understand why you did that." Mr. Harris, a man of about 50 years old in a gray suit, with a smile that didn't inspire my trust, stepped forward to shake my hand. "Miss Patricia, I am Robert Harris, a family law attorney. Your children are concerned about your mental health and asked me to assess the situation." I didn't take his hand. Instead, I went straight to my dining table and gathered all the documents he had gone through without my permission. "These are my private papers. You have no right to review them without my authorization." "Mom," Michael interrupted with a condescending tone he had perfected in recent years. "We're worried about you. Your behavior lately has been very strange. First you cut off our financial support for no reason, then you don't answer our calls. We thought perhaps you needed professional help." Ashley stepped closer and tried to take my hand with that fake tenderness she used only when she needed something. "Patricia, sweetheart, we know you've been under a lot of stress. Maybe loneliness is affecting you more than you think. At your age, confusion can happen." The word confusion rang in my head like an alarm bell. Now I understood why they had brought a lawyer. Not to help me, but to declare me mentally incompetent and take control of my finances. The woman who had told me they only invited special people to their wedding was now treating me like a senile old lady. "I am not confused," I said, with a firmness that silenced the room. "I am much more clear-headed than I have been for years, and you are going to leave my house right now." "Mr." Harris interjected in that professional tone lawyers use when they want to sound reasonable. "Miss Patricia, I understand you feel overwhelmed, but your children have the right to intervene if they believe your capacity to make financial decisions is impaired. They have documented several concerning behaviors." "Concerning behaviors?" A dry, almost cruel laugh escaped my throat. "How dare they decide that my money belonged to them? How dare they tell me I didn't have the right to stop supporting two grown adults who had shown me nothing but contempt?" Ashley jumped as if I had slapped her. "We never treated you badly. You are family. Everything you have will one day be ours anyway. We're just speeding up the process." There it was, the naked truth. In their minds, I was already as good as dead, and they were only collecting an early inheritance. It didn't matter whether I had 69 years left or 69 days. To them, I was just a walking bank account that had become inconvenient. "Get out," I said, pointing to the door. "All three of you get out of my house." Michael stood up with the petulant, childish expression he always wore when he didn't get what he wanted. "Mom, we can't just leave like that. We have responsibilities. The rent, the car payments, the credit card you co-signed. You can't cut us off overnight." "Can't I?" My voice rose for the first time in the conversation. "Who said I can't? For 36 years I paid rent for a place that isn't even in my name. I filled the refrigerator in an apartment where I wasn't welcome. I financed a life that clearly has no room for me." Mr. Harris pulled a folder from his briefcase and set it on my table. "Miss Patricia, we've prepared some documents that might make this transition easier. A power of attorney that would allow Michael and Ashley to manage your finances more efficiently. Temporarily, of course, until you feel better." I grabbed the folder and threw it straight into the trash without opening it. "The only transition happening here is you walking out the door." Ashley burst into tears. But they weren't tears of sorrow, they were tears of restrained anger. "You can't do this to us, Patricia. We depend on you. We made plans based on your support." "Plans based on my money," I replied. "Not on my health, not on my happiness, not on my presence, only on my money. And now that I've decided that money would be better used for my own life, suddenly I'm an elderly, confused woman who needs legal supervision." Michael tried to step toward me, but I took a step back. He was no longer the boy who ran into my arms from a nightmare. He was a 35-year-old man who saw his mother as an obstacle between him and a comfortable life financed by others. "Mom, we made mistakes," he said in a voice trying to sound remorseful. "The wedding was a misunderstanding. Ashley was nervous. I was under pressure. We can fix this if you just come back and be reasonable." Reasonable. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Being reasonable meant continuing to fund their lives while they treated me like a stranger. It meant pretending it didn't hurt to be excluded from the most important day of my only son's life. Mr. Harris closed the folder with the practiced professionalism of someone used to being rebuffed. "Miss Patricia, this is not over. Your family has legal options. If you are truly making irrational decisions due to mental health issues, a judge could determine you need supervision." His words landed like a slap. I realized this was not just a manipulative family visit, it was a real legal threat. They wanted to declare me incapable of managing my own affairs. "Mr. Harris," I said, looking him straight in the eye, "I suggest you investigate thoroughly before threatening a 69-year-old woman who has managed her finances impeccably for 40 years, who raised a son on her own after being widowed, who kept a home, worked until an honorable retirement, and until last week financially supported 2 fully capable adults. Ashley stopped crying and looked at me with a coldness that finally revealed her true face. "This won't end here, Patricia. We have rights and lawyers, too." "Wonderful," I replied. "Hire every lawyer you want with your own money. Of course, because my money is no longer available to fund your legal tantrums." The 3 of them left with the wounded dignity of people who are not used to hearing no. Before they went, Michael turned and looked at me one last time. "Mom, this is going to end badly for you. You'll be alone, and no one will take care of you when you really need it." "Michael," I said with a deep sadness but a crystalline clarity, "I am already alone. The difference is that now it is by my choice, not because of your neglect." When the door closed behind them, I stood in my living room surrounded by the most beautiful silence I had heard in years. It was the silence of freedom. That night I couldn't sleep, but not because I was sad or remorseful, because of the adrenaline of taking back control of my life. I lay awake planning my next moves like a general preparing for battle. If Michael and Ashley wanted war, I would give them one, but it would be a war waged with intelligence, not emotion. Early the next morning, I dressed and headed to the office of attorney David Miller, the lawyer I had seen years ago when I handled my husband's will. Mr. Miller, unlike Mr. Harris, had a sterling reputation and specialized in protecting the rights of older adults. "Miss Patricia," he said when I explained the situation, "what your children did yesterday is more common than you'd think. This is elder financial abuse, and it's a federal crime. They're entering your home without permission, and rifling through your private documents is also a violation." His words comforted and alarmed me at once, comforting because they confirmed I wasn't crazy, that what happened was abuse. Alarming because the situation was more serious than I'd imagined. "We need to document everything," David continued. "Every transfer, every gift, every time they pressured you for money. We'll also change your will to protect your assets from any future attempts at manipulation." We spent 3 hours reviewing my financial records. David whistled when he saw the total $44,260 over 3 years. "Miss Patricia, with that money you could have lived comfortably, traveled, enjoyed your retirement. Instead, I had financed the entire lives of 2 adults who didn't respect me enough to invite me to their wedding." When I left David's office, I had a plan, a complete plan. First, I would change every lock on my house. Second, I would install a security system with cameras to protect myself from future surprise visits. Third, I would open a new bank account at a different bank where they had no access. And fourth, I would start living the life I had postponed for so many years. My next stop was the hardware store. Mr. James, the owner, had known me for years because I often came in to buy things to fix Michael and Ashley's apartment, but this time it was different. "Miss Patricia, are you here for another emergency at your son's place?" Mr. James asked with the familiarity of someone who had silently witnessed my wasted generosity. "No, Mr. James," I replied. "This time it's for my own house. I need every lock changed, and I want the best ones you have." He looked surprised but asked no questions. As I was choosing locks, his son, Daniel, who installs security systems, walked in, as if fate had arranged it. "Daniel," I said, "I also need security cameras. The whole system. Price is no object." While they scheduled installation for the next day, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Ashley, calling from someone else's phone because I had blocked her number after yesterday's confrontation. "Patricia, it's me, Ashley. Please don't hang up. We need to talk like adults." "Go ahead," I said shortly. "I understand you're upset about the wedding. It was a mistake. Michael and I have talked and we want to make it up to you. How about we organize a special dinner to celebrate the wedding? We could do it at your house, cook together like before." The manipulation in her words was so transparent I almost laughed. "Ashley, how much rent do you owe?" The silence on the other end confirmed I'd hit the mark. 2 months, $3,000 total. But I'm not calling just about that, Patricia. We really miss you in our lives." "Do you miss me, or do you miss my money?" I asked directly. "Both," she answered with a surprising candor. "Patricia, I won't lie. Yes, we need your financial help, but we also love you. You're important to us." "If I'm so important," I replied, "why wasn't I important enough to be at your wedding? Why am I only important when you need money? When was the last time you called just to ask how I was?" Silence. We both knew the answer. Never. "Ashley, I'll say this one time. For 3 years you treated me like an emotional ATM. You used me, ignored me, humiliated me, and finally insulted me in the worst possible way. Now that the money is gone, all of a sudden you love me." "Patricia, please, there is no please." I cut her off. "You made your choice when you decided I wasn't special enough to attend your wedding. Now I'm making mine." I hung up and turned my phone off. I didn't want interruptions on my day of freedom. That afternoon I went to the hair salon, a place I hadn't visited in over a year. I always canceled appointments because Michael or Ashley had an emergency, or the money I'd set aside for myself had been diverted to their so-called emergencies. "Miss Patricia!" "Cynthia!" my favorite stylist exclaimed. "What a surprise! I thought you forgot about us." "I didn't forget, Cynthia. I just forgot that I deserved to be taken care of, too." I got the whole treatment, a cut, color, manicure, pedicure. For the first time in years, I spent money on myself without feeling guilty. While Cynthia worked, she told me about her life, her kids, her dreams. It was refreshing to have a conversation that didn't revolve around Michael and Ashley's needs. "You look wonderful, Miss Patricia," she said when she finished. "But more than that, you look liberated. Something good happen?" "Yes, Cynthia. I finally learned how to say no." When I got home, there was a car parked on my stoop I didn't recognize. My heart raced, thinking Michael and Ashley had come back with reinforcements. But as I drew closer, I saw an older woman sitting on the steps. "Miss Patricia?" she asked, as I stepped out of the car. "Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" "I'm Eleanor Smith. I live next door. We've been neighbors for years but never had the chance to talk. Yesterday I heard a loud argument at your place and I was worried. Is everything okay?" Her genuine concern moved me. A stranger cared more about me than my own son did. "Come in, Miss Eleanor. I'll make coffee and tell you a story you won't believe." While I prepared coffee, I told her everything. Eleanor listened without interrupting, nodding now and then. When I finished, tears glistened in her eyes. "Miss Patricia," she said, "you did the right thing. I went through something similar with my daughter 5 years ago. I used to think it was my responsibility to support her adult life. I believed if I didn't give money, she wouldn't love me." "What happened?" I asked. I cut her off when I realized she only called when she needed something. At first it was awful. She threatened me, emotionally blackmailed me, made me feel guilty. But after 6 months, she called to apologize from the heart. Now we have a real relationship based on love, not money. Her words gave me hope and confirmed I had made the right decision. "Do you think Michael and Ashley will understand one day?" "Maybe, maybe not," she answered honestly. "But that's not your responsibility anymore, Patricia. Your responsibility now is to live your own life." That night, for the first time in 3 years. I fell asleep without worrying whether Michael and Ashley had enough money for the rent, for groceries, or for their luxuries. I fell asleep thinking about myself, my plans, my future, and I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, Daniel and Mr. James arrived at 8 a.m. to change the locks and install the security system. While they worked, my phone kept ringing with unknown numbers. Ashley kept trying to reach me from different lines, but I had learned a new skill, completely ignoring calls that didn't deserve my attention. "Miss Patricia," Daniel said when the camera system was finished, "this system will give you total peace of mind. You'll be able to see who comes to your house on your phone, even when you're not home. And if someone breaks in, the police are notified automatically." I recognized the irony. I was installing a protection system to protect myself from my own son, but it no longer hurt me. It was simply a practical measure to safeguard my new peace. While they worked, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years: call my sister Linda in New York. We had fallen out of touch because every time we spoke, I ended up reporting Michael and Ashley's accomplishments, how much money I'd spent on them, how proud I was to help. Now I realized those calls were just financial reports disguised as family news. "Patricia," Linda said, surprised when she answered. "How are you? It's been months since we talked." "I'm fine, Linda. Actually, better than fine. I'm calling to tell you I finally woke up." I told her the whole story: the secret wedding, the humiliation, the visit with a lawyer, and my decision to cut them off financially. Linda listened in silence, and when I finished, her response surprised me. "Patricia, little sister, it's about time. Every time I heard you brag about how much you gave them, my heart broke. As if you thought love could be measured in dollars. I wanted to tell you something, but I didn't know how to begin." "What would you have said?" I asked. "That Michael never spoke of you with affection. At family gatherings, he'd say, 'My mother helped me with this,' or 'My mother bought me that,' but never, 'I miss my mom,' or 'I love my mom.' As if you were a service, not a person." Her words hurt, but it was the necessary hurt, like a doctor cleaning a rotten wound. Painful, but healing. "Do you know what struck me most?" Linda continued. "Ashley always talked about you in the future tense. When Patricia is gone, we'll renovate the house. Or, once we inherit, we'll invest. As if they're waiting for you to die so they can finally start living." That revelation hit me like a bucket of cold water. They didn't just see me as an ATM. They saw me as a temporary obstacle between them and the money. While I bent over backward to make them happy, they planned a life without me. After I hung up with Linda, I sat quietly in the kitchen, thinking it through. 45 years married to a man who truly loved me. 35 years raising our son alone after my husband died. And 3 years funding 2 adults who treated me like a walking burden worth tens of thousands of dollars. The doorbell rang. I looked through my new camera and saw Eleanor holding a cup of coffee. I opened the door, and she handed me a steaming mug. "I thought you might need some company after what you told me yesterday," she said with the sincere smile I'd begun to cherish. We sat in the living room, and Eleanor shared more of her own experience. "My daughter used to say the exact same things as Ashley. 'You're like a second mother to me. We're special to you. Everything will be ours one day.'" "Those are scripted lines, Patricia," she said. "They learned them from the Emotional Manipulation Handbook." "Do you really think there's such a handbook?" I asked, half joking. "Not officially, but it's like everyone reads from the same page." Chapter 1. Make her feel indispensable. Chapter 2. Create constant financial emergencies. Chapter 3. If she resists, question her mental health. We laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. Funny and tragic at once to recognize the repeating patterns in our own children's behavior. Eleanor, did you ever feel guilty after you cut them off? I asked. Every day during the first 3 months. She answered honestly. But after that, I started to see results. Her daughter had to take a second job. Her husband stopped playing golf every weekend and began looking for extra work. They learned to live within their means, and more importantly, they learned that I am a person, not a resource. That afternoon, I decided to do something I'd been putting off for years, visit my husband's grave. I always made excuses not to go because Michael or Ashley needed something, or because the taxi fare seemed better spent on one of their emergencies. The cemetery was peaceful and beautiful. David's grave looked a little neglected. I hadn't tended it in months. I sat on the grass beside the headstone and spoke to him as if he were alive. David, my love, I think I got lost for a while. After you left, I poured everything into Michael. I wanted to be the best mother to make up for him growing up without a father, but maybe in the process I forgot myself. Our son has become someone I don't recognize, or maybe he always was and I didn't want to see it, and his wife, you know how she is. The money you left for me to live peacefully, I spent on them. But not anymore, love. I've learned. I cleaned the grave, replaced the wilted flowers with fresh ones, and sat there for another hour just enjoying the peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing home to deal with a crisis at Michael and Ashley's. When I came back, 3 cars were parked in front of my house. My heart raced, but this time I was ready. The cameras showed Michael, Ashley, and 2 strangers. They all looked agitated, talking and pointing at my house. I didn't get out of the car. I later retained John Parker, a different attorney who filed the restraining order. John, they're at my house again. This time they brought others. What should I do? Don't get out of the car, Miss Patricia. I'm on my way and I'll call the police. After our talk yesterday, I filed a temporary restraining order. They have no right to be on your property. 15 minutes later, John arrived and 2 police cars pulled up. I watched the officers speak with Michael and Ashley. Michael waved his arms angrily, and Ashley started to cry again, but this time her tears didn't affect me. One of the officers approached my car. Ma'am, you can step out of the vehicle. They will be asked to leave right now. As I stepped down, Michael shouted from the street, Mom, this is ridiculous. We're family. You can't call the police on your own son. Family doesn't threaten to have you declared incapacitated. Family doesn't take other people's homes without permission. Family doesn't treat its mother like an ATM, I answered calmly. Ashley shouted from across the street, You have to pay us back what you owe. We have debts you co-signed for. You can't abandon us like this. John cut in immediately. Miss Ashley, any further communication must go through my office. And I advise you to consult with an attorney before making debt collection threats, because my client has complete documentation showing every payment was voluntary for 3 years. I watched them drive away, defeated but not yet surrendered. I knew this wasn't over, but for the first time I felt confident. I had a lawyer, I had Eleanor's emotional support, and most importantly, I had the clarity to tell right from wrong. That evening, Eleanor invited me over for dinner. I met her daughter who had come to visit, and I saw firsthand what a healthy family looked like. They spoke with respect, asked sincere questions about each other's lives, and laughed together. Not once did her daughter ask for money. That's what I want with Michael, I confessed to Eleanor after her daughter left. And maybe one day you'll have it, Eleanor replied. But first he has to learn that you're a person worthy of respect, not just a source of money. For the first time in weeks, I went to bed hopeful about the future. The next days were oddly peaceful. The cameras showed Michael and Ashley driving past my house several times a day, sometimes slowly, sometimes stopping for a few minutes but not getting out. It was as if they were studying my routine, looking for the right moment to make another move. John advised me to document every appearance, so I kept a detailed record with dates and times. Their persistence will work in our favor, he said. Each time they show up after being warned, it strengthens our case for a permanent restraining order. On a Friday morning, I was having a leisurely breakfast when the doorbell rang. The camera showed a young woman, neatly dressed, holding a file and wearing a professional smile. I didn't recognize her, but her demeanor suggested this wasn't a social call. "Good morning, Miss Patricia," she said when I opened the door. "I'm a social worker from the Department of Elder Services. We received a report that you might be in a risky situation, and we need to perform a welfare check." My blood ran cold. Michael and Ashley had escalated things. It was no longer just a private lawyer's threat, they'd involved the authorities. "May I see your identification?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "Of course." She produced an official-looking ID. "I'm Clara Roberts, a social worker. May I come in and speak with you?" I let her in because refusing now would hurt my case. Clara sat in the living room and took out a form. "Miss Patricia, we've received reports that you've had major changes in your financial behavior, that you cut off contact with your family, and that you've shown signs of paranoia by installing an unnecessary security system. We've also been told you refused medical and legal help offered by relatives." Every phrase had been chosen to paint me as an unstable old woman. I recognized Ashley's hand in the wording. She'd always paid. I've been good at twisting language to get what she wanted. "Miss Roberts," I said with all the dignity I could summon, "I'd like to call my lawyer before answering any questions." "Ma'am, this isn't a legal interrogation. It's a welfare check. If you have nothing to hide, there should be no problem talking to me." That "if you have nothing to hide" line made me furious. It's the same logic abusers use to justify invasion. "Miss Roberts, I will call my attorney. You can wait or come back another day, but I will not answer questions without legal representation." I called John, and he arrived in 20 minutes. When he stepped in and saw the social worker, his face hardened. "Miss Roberts," he said after checking her ID, "I hope you have a court order, because my client is under my legal representation. Any unauthorized assessment constitutes harassment." "Sir," Clara replied, less confidently, "we received reports from family members concerned for her well-being. It is our duty to investigate." "Which family?" John asked bluntly. "The same family that tried to make her sign a power of attorney without counsel? The same family that entered her home without permission and rifled through personal documents? The same family that excluded her from important events while living off her money?" John placed a stack of files on the table. "Here is the documentation of financial and emotional abuse. About $44,000 withdrawn from accounts over 3 years, systematic social isolation, and emotional manipulation. If anyone needs to be investigated, it's not my client." Clara read the files with growing discomfort. Clearly what she had been told didn't match the reality in front of her. "Miss Patricia," she said finally, "can you explain why you abruptly cut off financial support to your son?" I answered simply, "Because I realized that to them I was not a mother, I was a walking wallet. Because I'm tired of financing people who view me as a burden." "But don't you feel it is your responsibility?" she asked, and the question angered me. My responsibility as a mother was to raise my child to 18, to give him the tools to become an independent adult. My son is now 35, married, and fully capable of providing for himself. Whether I support him is a choice, and I chose to stop. John jumped in. Miss Roberts, do you really think it's normal for a 35-year-old man to be unable to pay rent without his 69-year-old mother's help? Clara didn't answer right away. I could see she was reconsidering the whole story. Miss Patricia, she asked after a moment, do you manage your own finances? Completely. I can show bank statements, investments, taxes. Everything is paid on time and in order. I live independently, take care of myself, keep my house tidy, handle my own transportation, and I have healthy social relationships with my neighbors. Are you on any medication? Only vitamins and supplements. I don't have any illnesses that require medication, John added. My client just underwent a full medical evaluation as part of the legal process. She is entirely healthy, both physically and mentally. Clara closed her file and sighed. Miss Patricia, based on this conversation and the documents I've reviewed, I see no evidence that you're in danger or need intervention. I will close this case. When she left, John and I sat in silence for a few minutes. Patricia, he said, this will escalate. Michael and Ashley won't stop until they regain access to your money. We have to prepare for the next move. That afternoon, thinking about the social worker's visit, I realized something important. I no longer felt like a victim. I felt like a woman who had taken back control and was ready to defend it. I called Linda to unburden myself. Patricia, little sister, she said, after hearing everything. What impresses me isn't how awful Michael and Ashley are, it's how strong you've become. She was right. A month ago, a visit like that would have destroyed me, made me doubt myself, maybe even reconsider continuing to support Michael and Ashley just to avoid trouble. But now, I stood firm in my decision. That evening, Eleanor brought a bottle of wine to visit. Miss Patricia, I want to toast with you to you standing your ground today against another attack on your freedom and winning again. Each time you hold firm, you grow stronger. We clinked glasses for this new strength, for a new life, for the freedom I had been waiting for all those years without even knowing it. Eleanor, I said as we sipped, do you think I will ever stop missing Michael the child he used to be? Probably not, she answered honestly. But you will stop letting that nostalgia chain you to the Michael he is now. Her words carried deep wisdom. I could love the boy he was without allowing the selfish, cruel grown man he had become to keep hurting me. That night I slept deeply, knowing that each day I would be stronger, more independent, freer. Michael and Ashley could keep trying to manipulate, threaten, or intimidate, but their power over me was over. My new life had only just begun. 2 weeks passed with no word from Michael and Ashley, and I began to think maybe they'd accepted reality. But on a Tuesday morning, while I was watering the plants in my garden, an unfamiliar car pulled up. An older man in a suit and a young woman carrying a briefcase got out. My heart raced again, not with fear this time, but with anger. How many more times were they going to try this? The man approached my door with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Miss Patricia Green, he said. I am Dr. Sawyer, a geriatric psychiatrist. This is my assistant, Dr. Kelly. Your family has hired us to assess your mental state. I don't need a psychiatric evaluation. I answered from the garden without coming any closer. And you two are trespassing on private property. Your son is very worried, he insisted. He says you've had sudden changes in personality, are acting irrationally with money, and showing signs of paranoia. A simple evaluation could clear this up. The young doctor intervened in a syrupy voice. It's just a conversation, Miss Patricia. If you're as well as you say, The evaluation will confirm it and your family will feel reassured. I recognized the tactic immediately. It was the same trick Ashley always used. If you have nothing to hide, what's the problem? But I wasn't the naive woman I had been a month ago. Dr. Sawyer, I said firmly, I am 69 years old, and I have managed my life my entire adult life. I will not submit to a psychiatric evaluation just because my son is upset that I stopped funding him. Ma'am, we understand this resistance, Dr. Kelly added in the condescending tone people use with children. But this is for your own good. For my own good? A bitter laugh escaped my throat. Do you know what would really be for my good? Stopping the rent payments to 2 grown people who disrespect me. And do you know what else would be for my good? Installing cameras so I can protect myself from relatives who think they can come into my home whenever they please. Right then, John pulled up. When the 2 doctors saw him, they exchanged awkward glances. Dr. Sawyer? John said, after getting out of his car. I hope you have a court order, because otherwise you are violating the restraining order we filed against my client's family. We are not family, Sawyer protested. We are mental health professionals hired by the family, hired by people who are barred from contacting my client, John replied sharply. This is third-party harassment, and it's illegal. He pulled out his phone and called the police. Please dispatch an officer here. 2 people are violating a restraining order and must be removed from my client's property. While we waited, Sawyer tried to justify their presence. Miss Patricia, your son gave us evidence of concern, unpaid medical bills, medications piling up, unusual spending. Doctor, I cut in, my son is lying. I have no unpaid medical bills because I am not ill. I have no medications piling up because I don't take any. And my spending is perfectly rational. I stopped throwing money at people who mistreat me. The younger doctor pressed on. Your family says you threatened to disinherit them, that you changed your will without telling anyone. Of course I changed my will, I said, raising my voice. Why would I leave my estate to people who excluded me from the most important moments of their lives? Why should I reward abuse with money? The police arrived, and Officer Anderson, who already knew the situation, stepped forward. Doctor, you need to leave now. This woman has an active protective order. We are medical professionals. We're not breaking the law, Sawyer argued. No, John cut in. You are there on behalf of people who are legally barred from contacting my client. That's indirect harassment. Sawyer and Kelly grumbled and left. Before they got into the car, the young doctor shouted, Miss Patricia, your family is only trying to help you. Don't let people isolate you from those who love you. People who love me do not try to declare me insane to steal my money, I shouted back. After they were gone, John and I sat in the living room to plan next steps. Patricia, things are out of control. Michael and Ashley are spending money they don't have to hire people to try to have you declared incompetent. That means they're desperate. What else could they do? They could try to file for guardianship, I said, shuddering at the thought. It's expensive and hard to win, but if they find a sympathetic judge and a doctor willing to testify, they could gain control of my finances. But we have strong evidence you are perfectly lucid and that their motives are greed, John reassured me. That afternoon I called Linda to unburden myself. Little sister, she said, do you realize how far they're willing to go for money? They're sacrificing family ties, throwing money at lawyers and doctors, destroying their own reputations all to get access to your account. Her words made me think. Michael and Ashley had revealed their true nature. There was no going back, no genuine reconciliation possible. To them, I had never been a respected mother or mother-in-law. I was a walking wallet. That realization, painful as it was, brought relief. I no longer had to wonder whether I was doing the right thing, nor feel guilty for protecting myself. They themselves had shown that my well-being meant less than money in their eyes. That evening, Eleanor surprised me. She invited her gardening club friends over so I could meet them. "Patricia," she introduced, "this is my friend Cynthia from the salon, you know, Maria, Carmen, and Esther. We've all gone through similar situations with abusive family members. We spent the evening sharing our stories. Maria had to set boundaries with a brother who constantly borrowed money. Carmen cut ties with a daughter who only showed up when she needed cash. Esther had to change her will after discovering grandchildren who treated her like a retirement plan. What hurts me most," I admitted, "isn't losing the money I gave, it's realizing the love I thought I had was never real." "Patricia," Esther said with the wisdom of 80 years, "real love can't be bought or sold. If you had to pay for it, it was never genuine." Her words were balm to my wounded soul. She was right. I'd been buying attention, not love. He's been funding an illusion. Do you know what I found out? I told my new friends. Loneliness surrounded by people who don't love you is far worse than being alone. At least now, when I'm alone, I'm in good company. We laughed and raised our glasses to the new clarity we'd found. After my guests left that night, I sat in the garden and watched the stars. The sky seemed brighter than ever, or maybe I was seeing it with clearer eyes. For the first time in my adult life, I was financially independent. I had no dependents, no financial obligations to anyone but myself. Instead of terrifying me, that reality moved me. I could travel if I wanted, renovate the house, buy nice clothes, donate to charities I truly cared about, invest in my own future instead of funding the present of ungrateful people. Freedom tasted like hope, and for the first time in years I actually wanted to plan for the future. A month after the episode with the psychiatrist, I thought I had finally won. I was living at a peaceful pace, mornings sipping coffee and reading the paper, tending the garden, lunches with Eleanor or a few new friends, and afternoons devoted to hobbies I'd abandoned. I had returned to painting, the old passion I'd had before I became the family accountant for Michael and Ashley. But on a Thursday morning, while I was painting flowers on my new easel, John walked in with a heavy expression that made my heart drop. "Patricia, we need to talk. Michael and Ashley have filed for the court to appoint a legal guardian for you." Those words landed like a boulder on my chest. I knew it could happen, but hearing him say it out loud made it a terrible reality. "Does that mean they could take control of my money?" John nodded. "If a judge finds you lack capacity to manage your affairs, yes, they could be appointed guardian, which would give them full control over your finances." I sank into a chair, feeling as if I'd been stabbed by the deepest betrayal of my life. My own son was trying to have his mother declared legally incapacitated to seize her money. "John, what evidence do they have?" "You've seen me. I'm perfectly lucid." "They have statements from 3 witnesses who say they've seen you acting erratically. They've submitted unpaid medical bills and medications they claim you've purchased but not used. There's also a report from Dr. Sawyer saying you refused to cooperate with a psychiatric exam, and they're using that as evidence of cognitive decline. The scheme was diabolical. They'd turned my rightful self-protection into proof against me." "Who are those 3 witnesses?" John looked through the papers. "Ashley, of course, a neighbor named Oliver, and your pharmacist, Scott." I went numb. Oliver was the cantankerous neighbor across the street who always complained when my friends parked in front of his house. And Scott was indeed my pharmacist, but why would he testify against me? "I need to see pharmacist Scott," I said. That afternoon we went to the pharmacy. Scott greeted me, embarrassed. "Miss Patricia, it's good to see you. I heard you signed a statement saying I have erratic behavior with medications." His face flushed. "Your daughter-in-law came in a few weeks ago and said she was concerned for you. I honestly told her you only buy vitamins and the occasional aspirin. You don't have regular prescriptions. But she insisted that was evidence you weren't taking care of your health." John interjected. "Did you sign a document?" "She gave me a paper saying I confirmed Miss Patricia has irregular medication purchases. I thought it was for insurance. I didn't realize it was for a lawsuit." I asked him to write a full, accurate statement explaining what really happened. He agreed immediately, regretful at being misled. After that, we went to Oliver's house. When he opened the door, he glared at us. "What now?" "You signed." "A statement about my client's behavior?" John asked. "Yeah. She's mad. She's been acting strange lately." "Specifically?" "Installed cameras like she's in a war zone, having strangers over all the time, and yelling out into the street at her family." I understood right away. The cameras were to protect me. The strangers were my new friends. The yelling was when I stood up to Michael and Ashley storming into my home. I asked, "Do you know why I installed cameras?" "No, and I don't care," he said. "To protect myself from my son and daughter-in-law, people who have come into my home without permission." "Sounds like something a crazy old woman would say," he sneered. There was no arguing with him. Malice drove his testimony. That evening, John and I planned our defense. "Patricia, we need an official psychiatric assessment," he said. "I know a colleague doctor, Helen Carter, who specializes in capacity evaluations. She will confirm your condition." The next day, I saw Dr. Carter. She was a woman in her 50s, kind-eyed but sharp. She asked questions, tested my memory, reasoning, financial comprehension, and emotional state, and had me do logic and math problems. After 2 hours, she concluded, "Your results are well above the average for your age. You are fully lucid, with excellent cognitive capacity." I breathed a sigh of relief, though it tasted bitter. That professional confirmation was comforting, but it also proved how serious the legal battle would be. That afternoon, Eleanor called our gardening group to an emergency meeting. When I told them what was happening, they were furious. "Patricia, we will go to court and testify for you," Maria said. "We've been with you these past weeks. Everyone can see you are perfectly fine." "Not just fine," Carmen added. "You're clearer and stronger than many women in their 40s, I know." Esther, with 80 years of life behind her, took my hand. "My child, what they are doing is not new. Greed has always existed. But you have what many victims don't: documentation, a lawyer, and friends willing to stand up for you." Her words gave me hope. I was not alone. I had an entire team of strong women who had watched my transformation firsthand. "Do you know what pains me the most?" I said. "Michael and Ashley are willing to destroy any chance of reconciliation for money. Even if I wanted to forgive what happened, now there's no going back." "Maybe that's for the best," Cynthia said. "At least now you know exactly who they are and can act accordingly." That night, for the first time since this nightmare began, I cried. Not from sorrow, but as a mourning I was saying goodbye forever to the son I thought I had, to the dream of a loving family, to the illusion that unconditional love would be returned. At the same time, something new was beginning to grow inside me. I had a fierce resolve. I would not let anyone steal not only my money, but my dignity and freedom. The official fight had begun, and I was ready. The trial date came 3 weeks later. I woke early, put on my best black suit, and looked in the mirror with a determination I'd never felt before. Today it wasn't just my mental capacity on trial. It was my dignity as a human being, my right to live free from abuse, my worth beyond the numbers in a bank account. John arrived at 7 a.m. to run through our strategy one last time. Patricia, remember the burden of proof is on them. They have to show you're incapable. We only need to show you're not. I asked. What if the judge is biased against me? John reassured me. Judge Martin is known to be fair. He doesn't favor families automatically. He cares about protecting older adults' rights. We arrived at the courthouse at 9 a.m. In the hall I saw Michael in a new suit he must have bought for the occasion, and Ashley in black as if at a funeral. Perhaps it was indeed the funeral of our family ties. Michael avoided my eyes, but Ashley stared coldly, confirming for me that this was, to her, just a business transaction. Their lawyer was an older man, confident in the way of someone who's won similar cases. As soon as he started, his strategy was clear. Paint me as a confused elderly woman, manipulated by outsiders away from her loving family. He spoke solemnly. Your Honor, Miss Patricia Green has shown evident cognitive decline in recent months. She cut off all financial support to her family without rational explanation, installed unnecessary security systems out of paranoia, and isolated herself from relatives under the influence of neighbors and attorneys, exploiting her vulnerable condition. Each carefully chosen phrase tried to turn my autonomy into pathology, my freedom into evidence of manipulation. Ashley was the first witness. She wept like a skilled actress, describing how I'd changed completely, become hostile and paranoid, and cut myself off from the loving family. Miss Patricia has always felt like a second mother to me. Watching her decline has been devastating. We only want her to receive the care she needs. Lies wrapped in counterfeit tears. But when John cross-examined her, the cracks appeared. Miss Ashley, can you tell the court the last time you called my client without asking for money? Ashley stammered. Well, we always talk about lots of things. Can you give a specific date? She couldn't. John pressed on. Is it true you and your husband married without inviting my client? Ashley flushed. The phrase, only special people invited in, what context did you say that to your mother-in-law? She fell silent. Michael was next. Watching my son swear to tell the truth as he prepared to fabricate stories about my mental health was one of the most painful moments of my life. He testified. My mother has always been generous, but lately she's become erratic and unreasonable. I believe she's being exploited, John asked. How much money have you received from your mother in the past 3 years? Michael couldn't recall. About $300,000. Is that roughly correct? Michael hesitated. Maybe. And how many times did you visit your mother without asking for money? The silence was deafening. John continued. Is it true you and your wife entered my client's home without permission and searched through her private documents? Michael defended himself. We were worried about her. Is it true you brought a lawyer to pressure her to sign a power of attorney? We only wanted to help manage finances. A 35-year-old needs a 69-year-old to pay his rent? Michael had no answer. Oliver's testimony was limited to superficial observations. He never once spoke directly with me. Doctor. Sawyer asserted that my refusal to undergo evaluation was evidence of cognitive decline, but John introduced Dr. Helen Carter's report, which completely contradicted Sawyer's conclusions. Then it was our turn. Pharmacist Scott explained how he had been misled into signing a false statement. Dr. Helen Carter testified about my excellent cognitive test results. Mr. Coleman from the bank testified to my financial competence, explaining that canceling automatic transfers had been a rational, properly executed decision. Eleanor and my gardening group testified to my lucidity, renewed vitality, and ability to maintain healthy social relationships. Finally, it was my turn. I stood up with all 69 years of experience and walked to the witness stand. I told the whole story. About $44,000 over 3 years. The humiliation of being excluded from the wedding, the emotional manipulation, the invasion of my privacy, the legal threats. John asked, "Why did you decide to cut off financial support?" I answered firmly, because I finally understood it wasn't love. It was a commercial transaction disguised as family. My money mattered, but I did not. Do you regret it? I only regret not doing it sooner. Michael's lawyer tried to rattle me, but I answered each question clearly. When he suggested my new friends were manipulating me, I said, "For the first time in years, I have relationships based on respect, not money." In his closing, Michael's lawyer kept insisting I was a victim of manipulation. John replied sharply, "This is not an incapacitated elderly person. This is a woman who has found the strength to break free from years of financial and emotional abuse. The plaintiffs have no medical evidence. They are angry because their source of income chose to protect herself." Judge Martin retired to the bench for 2 hours that felt like 2 years. When he returned, he said, "It is clear to this court that Miss Patricia Green is fully mentally competent. Psychiatric evaluations confirm her capacity. Her financial decisions, although painful for the family, are rational and within her rights. Furthermore, the evidence suggests this action is motivated more by greed than by genuine concern." He dismissed the guardianship petition in its entirety. I had won. I had won not just the case, but my freedom, my dignity, my right to live without being abused by the very people who should have loved me. When we left the courthouse, I saw Michael and Ashley arguing with their lawyer. Ashley shot me a look of pure hatred as she walked away. Michael showed a fleeting trace of regret, but it was too late. That night, Eleanor hosted a celebration at my house with our friends. We raised our glasses to justice, to freedom, to the sisterhood of strong women who support one another. Esther said, "Patricia, today you didn't just win a case, you won your life back." She was right. For the first time in years, the future belonged entirely to me. I could travel, love, create, live without fear or shame. 3 months later, I sold the house and moved into a lovely apartment near downtown. I donated half my money to organizations that protect older adults from family abuse, and with the other half, I started living the life I had always dreamed of. I went to Europe, took painting classes, and joined volunteer groups. I never heard from Michael and Ashley again. I learned only that they had had to move into a smaller apartment and that Ashley had gone to work for the first time in years. Perhaps adversity taught them what my generosity never could, the value of honest work and independence. Sometimes, looking at the starry sky from my new balcony, I think of the woman I was a year ago, fearful, manipulated, convinced she had to buy love. That woman is dead. In her place, someone new has been born, someone who understands an important truth. True love is never for sale, and freedom is never too expensive. I used to believe a mother's love was unconditional, eternal, enough to hold a family together. But sometimes the people you love most teach you the bitter lesson that love, if only one way, can become a burden. I do not regret having sacrificed, opening my heart, giving, But I know that if I'd continued that way, I would have lost myself. Family for me now is no longer defined only by blood. It is defined by kindness. I have learned that true love doesn't have to be bought, doesn't demand proof in dollars, and that sometimes loving yourself enough means setting boundaries so others cannot cross them. If you have ever had your kindness taken for granted, your love exploited, I hope this story gives you a little strength, the strength to say, enough, the strength to choose freedom, even if that means stepping away from those closest to you. What about you? Have you ever had to let go of a relationship not because you stopped loving, but because you needed to be respected? Please share your story below. Someone out there might be listening and needs to know they are not alone. And if stories like this move you, follow along so you and I and other women can walk through pain together, learn to stand firm, and find ourselves again in this life.